Hey everyone, this is Matthew Kent and welcome to the Theology on the Ground YouTube channel. So here's the deal. Today we're talking about something that's a very important issue to me, and that's the issue of abortion. Whoa! Wait a minute, you think. Abortion? Matthew, I've loved watching your videos. I've loved your blog. You talk about the Bible. You talk about theology. Why did you have to get political, man? Look, here's the deal. The Christian life is all-encompassing. God wants all of our hearts, all of our minds, and the reality is, as you begin to live out the Christian life, as you begin to follow the Lord, become conformed to the image of Christ, that faith is going to have influence on every other area of your life, and yes, that includes politics. So yes, sometimes we have to talk about politics, although let me offer the caveat before I say that this isn't even primarily a political issue. And in fact, this level oftentimes is more fruitfully attacked from a personal level. If you know someone who has an unintended pregnancy and is considering terminating it, to offer them help, offer them support, to help meet their needs, to help hook them up with organizations that can meet their needs. And there are plenty of organizations, Christian-funded organizations that exist to do such a thing. So in one respect, it's an issue that's bigger than politics, but of course it is a hot button political issue too, both in terms of, should it be legal even, however many years, 43, 44 years, after Roe versus Wade. That question hasn't gone away. That's still a big question in our society, and a lot of people, myself included, think that it should not be. And then of course there's other issues with it in terms of, well, if a woman does have a right to an abortion, how late, and all of these other considerations. What kind of requirements should be put on providers of abortion? Should they be treated like a hospital and regulated like that? Are they okay just kind of, sleazy shop in the corner? Is that okay? So these debates, these things come up all the time. But from a Christian perspective, we really need to get a foundation on the issue of life and what our handle, what our response should be to this issue. And let me just start by saying, I think there's plenty of reasons that even from a secular perspective, people should recognize that the unborn child is a real human being, a real human person. I'll get into one of them later. But the reality is, and what I'll just mention beforehand, since this is a video channel for Christians, it's a blog for Christians, is I think from a Christian perspective, there really can be no doubt about this issue, that the unborn child is a human being created in the image of God. And so, you think about Psalm 139:13, that's the very famous verse, that God, we learn that God knits people together in their mother's womb. You think about, with Jeremiah and first chapter of the book of Jeremiah, if you go read it, God says that he knew Jeremiah. This word knew, Hebrew yada. God knew Jeremiah from his mother's womb. So when you think about that word know, also, it's not just like God knew about him. You talk about God's omniscience, God knows all things. That's not what he means. It's like this intimate relational thing. And if you look at how the word is used, for example, in Genesis 4:1, it's used as a euphemism for sexual intercourse, right? It denotes, it has a connotation of great intimacy, of relationship. In fact, at one point in Genesis, I don't remember exactly where this is. It's in the story of Abraham, maybe Genesis 19 or so. So he actually, this word yada, to know, is used as a synonym for choose, that God chose Abraham. And I think a lot of translations even put it that way. So when it comes to the debate in the public square, the political issue, you have the two sides, and what are the two sides called? You have pro-choice and pro-life. Now immediately you can probably see how there's problems, right? One side is framing the debate about choice, and one side is framing the debate about life. So you can see how they might talk past each other. They're also referring to different people, right? The pro-choice side is talking about the woman's choice. So, you have the issue of choice, and the person in question is the woman. The pro-life side, the issue at stake is life, and the person in question is the child. So you have one side talking about the mother, and her choice. The other side talking about a child and their life. And so the two sides are a lot of times talking past one another. And just the question I want to tackle today is, because obviously one of these sides is right, not in general, although that's certainly true, but even in their choice of how they brand, how they talk about, how they define their position, right? This issue is either about choice or it's about life. Or at the very least, even if both are involved somehow, one of them has to be above the other. One of them has to be more important. One of them has to be more ultimate, and has to be the one that we go to make this decision of whether or not a woman has the right to an abortion. So the issue of choice is connected around this idea of bodily autonomy, right? So that would be an important word, bodily autonomy. Bodily autonomy means that a woman has the right to choose what to do with her own body. And so that means that if she's pregnant, she has the right to terminate the pregnancy, no questions asked. No one can impede, no one can, prevent her from exercising her bodily autonomy. So, here's the straight up truth though. No one has absolute bodily autonomy. No one. No one, no one, no one, no one. No one has absolute bodily autonomy. Just think about this for a second. Well, I'll give 3 different examples. Consider the issue of prostitution. If a woman has the right to do whatever she wants with her own body, then certainly, there can be no debate about this, she has the right to prostitute herself. Right? Prostitution is an act of free commerce, which, hey, in a capitalistic society we should be for, between 2 consenting adults regarding the use of their bodies and nothing else, right? There's some money that changes hands. It's okay for money to change hands, right? Capitalism, let the free market determine prices for prostitution, that kind of thing. Why is prostitution illegal? It's only on a moral ground, but the fact that prostitution is illegal illustrates that nobody has bodily autonomy that just overrides every other consideration. And in fact, the government doesn't have to yield to your claims of bodily autonomy at every turn, right? They can say, no, your bodily autonomy stops here. And one of the places that line has been drawn, historically and in our country today is prostitution. Okay, well, consider another example. How about a pedophile? Does he have the right to go to a public park full of kids and expose and or gratify himself? No, he does not. So here's the deal. He'd be arrested for indecent exposure, and there's probably some other lewdness charges that would go in there. So what's going on? He has the right to bodily autonomy. He's not hurting anybody. He's minding his own business, keeping his hands to himself. That was probably crossed some sort of line saying that, but you get what I'm talking about. He's not hurting anybody else. Why should this be wrong? And what's really amazing here is that not only does bodily autonomy not cover that right, but really the thing that's trumping his bodily autonomy in this instance is the right that other people have to not be exposed to public nudity and vulgarity and lewdness. So, that's crazy to me that bodily autonomy is important, and in general the government shouldn't be telling you, you can't get an ear piercing or something like that. But bodily autonomy certainly has its limits, and in some cases, bodily autonomy is so fragile that basically somebody else's right to not be exposed to public nudity is stronger than your bodily autonomy. Final example that we'll consider, and the most relevant, is, okay, so you have the right to do what you want to do with your hands. You can paint your nails, or you can use your hands to draw or to write, or to smack yourself in the face if that's what you're into. But here's the question: do you have the right to use your hands to beat somebody to a bloody pulp, or to strangle them, to kill them by choking the life out of them? No, you don't. Okay, well, I can hear the objection already. Well, wait. Clearly that doesn't relate to abortion. When you're choking somebody, you're interfering with their bodily autonomy. You're hurting someone else. Glad you brought up that point, because that does relate to abortion. The issue with abortion is not whether or not a woman has the right to choose. It's not whether or not a woman has bodily autonomy. She does. I would never deny that. Everybody deserves bodily autonomy protected by the government, but bodily autonomy has its limits, and one of its limits, not certainly its only limit, but one of its limits is not extending harm to another human being, and especially not killing another human being. So the thing that's ultimately going to determine whether or not abortion is morally permissible, and the thing that's going to determine whether or not it should be legally permissible, is, are you ending the life of another human being? Because if you are, it's morally impermissible, and we all have disagreements about the limit and scope of government, but I think the number one thing that everyone agrees on is that the government should protect you from someone else's attempt to take your life. The government should protect you against somebody else's attempt to take your life. That is the basic number one function of government, is to ensure the safety of its citizens. If it's not doing that, it's failing as a government. That's why there's so much unrest right now politically. There are people in this country who feel like, no, we are not looked after. There are people who do not care if we are murdered. I'm not going to get into that issue today. That's a whole separate video. But it's a real concern. A real concern, because the number one function of government is to protect the safety of its citizens. So the debate is about life, not choice. And so anytime that you hear a pro-choice advocate talking until they're blue in the face about choice, they've missed the point completely. They need to focus their efforts completely, entirely on why they think that the unborn child is not a human being, is not a life, does not deserve protection, all of that kind of stuff. Because really, that's where the debate is. And if they don't go there, they lose the debate, because we agree with them. They say, I believe a woman has a right to choose. So do I, just not abortion. Simple, right? Okay, so one last thing that I want to mention, and what's so ironic about this, you know, there's all kinds of ways that they will then look and say, well, you know, we're the strong, we're the mighty, so we can, you know, look at the weak and helpless child and woman can't speak for themselves, and we'll tell them all these reasons why they're not a human being. And like I've mentioned, and I'm not going to get into this video, I think there's lots of great reasons why everyone, even non-Christians, should look at a child in the womb and consider it a real human being, a real person. But one of them that specifically relates to this video is bodily autonomy. If we're going to say that a woman has a right to an abortion because she has bodily autonomy, why does the fetus, the child in the womb, not have a right to bodily autonomy over their body? Because at every stage an abortion happens, even really every stage from conception. I know there's some issues with, you know, some splitting that can happen early on, or reabsorption, or different things. But the child in the womb has a physical form of their own. They have a body. And even during many, many, many of the stages and the time frames that abortion happens during, it's a body that we can see with ultrasound. We can and look at it, and it clearly looks human. Now, the fact that we can only see at a certain stage, you know, and if you go to get an ultrasound, say at, you know, 4 or 5 weeks, it's just gonna, you're not gonna be able to see anything. It's just gonna look like a big ball of, you know, fuzz or something, a blob. But the fact that we can't see it doesn't mean that it's not there, doesn't mean that it doesn't have a body of its own. And yes, to some extent, you know, it doesn't have full control over its body, but I mean, what level of control of your body is needed? I mean, babies don't have control, infants don't have full control of their body, certainly don't have a fully developed body yet. You know, the child in the womb is just in many ways analogous and similar to the child outside the womb. And horrifyingly, there are some pro-choice people who have begun to become consistent, and they say, well, infanticide should be morally necessary because if the child in the womb is not a person and doesn't deserve protection, then neither is the child outside of the womb. That's horrifying. At least they're logically consistent. Most people are logically inconsistent on this issue, which is infuriating because it allows them to defend abortion. But at the same time, I would rather not have them become logically consistent and just wrong on both points, that an infant's not really a person and that an unborn child's not really a person. I would rather have them become consistent with the truth and then internally consistent with their own position. So anyways, there it is. The big takeaway is that yes, a woman has bodily autonomy, no doubts, no questions. Everyone has bodily autonomy. Definitely women do, but that bodily autonomy has limits. There's a whole range of practices that bodily autonomy does not cover, and therefore are subject to control by the government. I shouldn't say control, you don't want to say that, but you know, the government is within its rights to prohibit, you know, certain practices, prostitution, public lewdness, hurting somebody else, killing somebody else, some of the things that I've gotten into in the video. The abortion debate is about the life of the child, not the choice of the woman, and one of the strong arguments for the reason we should protect the child is because they have a body. And one of the primary rights that bodily autonomy gives a person is the right to protection, that government should protect them from harm. So, I mean, really the choice is clear. The pro-life position is the only sane, only rational position. I am fully aware that there are a whole host of other issues that come with it about how difficult certain people's lives will be if they're forced to carry a pregnancy to term, about economic hardship, various things like that. But really, once the issue has been settled of whether the child in the womb is a person, none of that matters, right? You don't let a person die just because of economic hardship down the line. You don't. No one would ever say that. No one would ever argue that. So at the end of the day, there's other issues, and we should address those. I'm not saying we should sweep them under the rug and ignore them, but as Christians, our response to those should be compassion and help. And I'm so grateful for so many great crisis pregnancy centers that are funded almost entirely by the work of Christians. And I think as Christians, we should stay involved in this area. And you know, our dollars are well spent going towards helping those who need it, so that we can address real issues of hardship and economic hardship that arise from unintended pregnancies. But you know, from a perspective of is abortion morally right or wrong, those concerns are entirely irrelevant, because the personhood and the fact that the child in the womb is a human being trumps all other concerns. It does. It just trumps all other concerns. So I'll do more videos on this subject in the future, because like I said, it's one that I'm passionate about, it's one that I care about, it's one that as Christians we should be thinking about, and it's one of the primary disagreements that we've had with the larger secular culture for the last 40 plus years, and it's not going away. So until then, I hope this video has blessed you, and make sure that you subscribe to the channel to get more videos, to get the other ones that I'll be doing about abortion. I believe the next one that I'm doing will be about I've already done the blog post about it, but I'm responding to a meme that I saw on Facebook about abortion, and I think it's very enlightening. It goes over a lot of sort of common pro-choice arguments, and until we see each other next time, blessings.